Yesterday we started to talk about Bilam's prophecy of Moshiach and how there are two phases to that prophecy. On the one hand, he talks about an individual, a person who will be this ultimate Jewish leader, who will be the Moshiach that, so to speak, changes the world and rescues us and so on. But on the other hand, he's also talking about the Moshiach within every one of us. I guess it gives a whole new meaning because the verse said, Dorach koichav mi Yaakov, when a star will shoot out from Yaakov. That refers to this Moshiach. So I guess it gives a whole new meaning to saying, you're a star in a Jewish context. It's a whole different meaning. So it's very interesting that here we are. We spoke about this yesterday and we started to develop the theme that there's this inner Moshiach that we have. There was a great Hasidic master by the name of Rabbi Menachem Nochum of Chernobyl. People don't realize that long before Chernobyl became Chernobyl, as you pronounce it, became renowned because of the nuclear accident, it was a big part of Hasidic history. So Rabbi Nochum Chernobyl has said that the name that we use to refer collectively to human beings is Adam. Right? Adam. In addition to the fact that that was the first human being that ever lived, but the word Adam actually becomes a collective noun for people. Now, there are other ways that you could refer to people as well. For example, you could say Anoshim, which is the plural of the word Ish. You could say Enosh, which is like humankind. So there are different ways that you could refer to a human being. Adam, generally speaking, if you look in Torah, is usually used as a very complimentary term. If a person is the way that they should be, then they get to be called Adam. And by the way, the best way that we could translate the word Adam in our normal slang is a mensch. A mensch. That's the ultimate kind of a human being. So Rabbi Nochum Chernobyl has said that the word Adam is an acronym. It's 3 letters. So it's an acronym for Adam, the original Adam, David, King David, and Moshiach. And of course that implies that there's a very strong correlation between the 3 personalities, and there's a continuum that runs through those 3 personalities. So Adam is considered the person who had a very unique kind of a soul that incorporated all of the souls of all people who would ever live until the end of time. And that's why when Adam makes a mistake in his life and he eats from the tree of knowledge, it has an impact on every single person until the end of time. But from another perspective, you could say Adam is the one who launched the experience of Jewish life and purpose. Well, how could you say that? I mean, it seems like he did the most terrible thing, and he made the first major mess up in history. What do you mean the launch? So Hashem originally created the world that we would live in Gan Eden, and Gan Eden was a beautiful place, and there was spiritual awareness, and there was connection to Hashem, and you could speak to Hashem directly, and if you were out of line, he came and he rebuked you. It was like a wonderful place to live, but it's not the purpose. That's not where Hashem wanted life to play out. Because in Gan Eden, you don't really have the opportunity to achieve. You don't really have the opportunity to make hard choices and to be able to succeed in making those choices. So ultimately, the goal and the purpose was not for people to remain in Gan Eden. It was for them to have a taste of how life is supposed to be. And then once you've had that sample, you go out and you have to try and find it in your own life. So Adam is the one who launched that process. Because of his decision to listen to Chava when she suggested that they have fruit salad. So as a direct result of that, they got kicked out of Gan Eden, which on the face of it seems like a terrible thing, but actually is exactly what Hashem had in mind. So he begins the process. King David is the first person within the Jewish community to have the role of king in the way that Hashem originally intended it. So even though he had a predecessor, King Saul was not the way that Hashem had intended it, and that's why the prophet Shmuel is quite upset at the Jewish people for asking for a king at that time in that context. But King David, he starts the dynasty of kings. And what's relevant about the dynasty of kings is that the persona of a king is supposed to be an individual who is so committed to Hashem and therefore is put into this position of authority to get all of us to be committed to Hashem as well. That's how it's supposed to work. Unfortunately, many kings did not live up to that expectation. But Adam started the process of the general spiritual service that we're supposed to achieve. And King David started the service of the particular mode of serving Hashem, which is related to having a king in that particular position. Moshiach is the one who culminates both of those processes. So Moshiach completes what Adam started, and Moshiach takes the kingship of King David to the highest level. So that's Adam, David, Moshiach, the three letters that are represented by the word Adam. Except there's an interesting thing. The word Adam is actually the name of every single one of us. Every person can be referred to as Adam. Okay, ideally we hope that the person will really be a mensch. But even if they're not such a mensch, you still fit into this general category, this collective noun called Adam. So therefore, says Reb Nachum of Chernobyl, what it's telling us is just like the whole continuum of Jewish history is Adam, David, Moshiach. Inside every single person, there are those three components. There's a component like Adam, there's a component like David, and there's a component like Moshiach. So that ties in directly to what we began to learn yesterday, that we all have this Moshiach component inside of ourselves. We also see this, by the way, illustrated in another place. Every single Yom Tov, assuming, of course, that you could go to shul. So what happens on Yom Tov is, when we open the ark to take out the Torah, we sing Hashem, Hashem, Kel Rachum V'chal Rat. We sing the 13 attributes of Hashem's mercy. And then there's a paragraph that you're supposed to read on the three major festivals, Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkot. And it's a petition to Hashem to bless us and to bless our families. And one of the things that we say in that petition is we say, may the following verse, be fulfilled for me. Which verse? V'nocha alav ruach Hashem. It's a verse from the book of Yeshaya, from the prophecies about the time of Moshiach, where he says that the persona of Moshiach, we actually read this on the last day of Pesach in the Haftarah. He says that one of the qualities of Moshiach is v'nocha alav ruach Hashem, that the spirit of Hashem will rest on him. So we get up in shul and we say, let the spirit of Hashem rest on me. In other words, we invoke a verse, a prophecy about Moshiach, and we say it should happen to us. So some of the commentaries ask, how can you do that? It's very clear that that pasuk is referring to Moshiach. How dare you, an ordinary individual, start saying, please God, that should apply to me. What are you? You're looking for a job? You want the role? You want to become Moshiach? I'll show you a nice place not too far from here, where they have people who have such delusions and they keep them safe from society. People who think that they're Moshiach. Go to Jerusalem. Ever been to Jerusalem? Plenty of people in Jerusalem who think they're Moshiach. And it's always seen as a negative thing. So why would the Torah encourage us? Why would our liturgy include something where we say, I should see in my life the fulfillment of that prophecy? So some of the commentaries leave this as a question mark. They don't even offer an explanation. But the Rebbe says there's a very important explanation over here. When you stand in shul on a Yom Tov, it's a special day. Why are you in shul? Why are you in shul? What, because there's going to be a kiddush afterwards? That's why you're in shul. No, then you'd come for the kiddush. Why are you in shul? Because you feel at this point in time, this is who I am. This is who I am. I've always thought about it. If we would stand outside shul on a Yom Tov, especially, let's say, okay, you don't say this particular prayer at Kol Nidre, but just to illustrate the point, if you would stand outside a shul on the eve of Kol Nidre, and as people walk out of the shul, you do interviews with them. Say, excuse me, can I ask you a question, please? Are you religious? You ask them the question as they do that switch. You know the switch, where you take the car keys out of the pocket and the yarmulke goes into the same pocket. So at that point in time, you ask them, are you religious? What's the person going to say? No, I'm not religious. I don't claim to be religious. So then you ask them, do you believe in the validity of the Torah, that it's a divine work? So I don't know. I'm not sure. There's certain things in the Torah that I have a tremendous respect for. There are other things in the Torah that I think maybe are a little bit outdated. Some of them were quite barbaric. So then you ask them the killer question. So do you believe in God? Now, of course, the classic way that a Jewish person answers a question is with another question. So do you believe in God? It depends. What do you mean God? What do you mean believe? If believe means that I'm 100% committed, I'm not necessarily 100% committed. God, I don't know. After the Holocaust, I'm not so sure about God. Depends what kind of a God you're talking about. So now by this stage, the journalist gets a bit frustrated and said, listen, you're not religious. You're not convinced of the validity of the Torah. And now you have doubts whether you believe in God. Why on earth are you at Shul on Yom Kippur? And they look at you like you're mad. Because it's Yom Kippur. What else? What else do you want? I don't have to believe this stuff. This is who I am. It's not what I believe. It's not something I learned. It's not a tradition that I'm committed to. So when you stand in Shul on Yom Tov and you open up the ark, and we're told that the symbolism of opening the ark is that's like opening the gateway to heaven. So it's the closest you'll ever get to a face-to-face with Hashem. Right? You're standing there in front of His Torahs. You're standing there in front of the part of the Shul that is supposed to represent, this is where, so to speak, Hashem is. This is where we direct ourselves when we're done. When you stand there in front of the ark and you open it up, at that moment in time, you touch the honest truth of who you are. Who am I? I'm Jewish. That's who I am. I don't know if that means that I believe. I don't know if that means that I'm observant. I don't know. I don't know what it means. I haven't drilled down into the details yet. But this is the fact, and it's immutable. I am Jewish. So at that point in time, you feel the Moshiach inside of yourself. What's Moshiach? Moshiach is where everything that ordinarily is obscured and hidden suddenly can be revealed. Moshiach is that we live in a world where Hashem is more theory than reality. And when Moshiach comes, Hashem becomes reality and other things become theory. So therefore, life sorts itself out. And that's why it's a good time. And that's why there's bracha. And that's why we don't have all of the horrible things that we're so used to in this world. On a personal level, the Moshiach within myself is the part of me that says, this is who I am. Maybe the rest of the time I behave differently. Maybe I have issues with the theology of it. Maybe I have issues with people who represent the religion. Whatever it is, all my stuff, all my hang-ups is external. The Moshiach part of myself is where I recognize who I truly am. So when a person stands there in front of the ark and opens up the ark on Yom Tov, at that moment you can say, I am Moshiach like V'nocha alav. That prophecy about Moshiach, Yiskayim bi. It should be something that happens to me in my life. Because I and Moshiach, like we learned yesterday, are not altogether different. My neshama is 100% one with Hashem, and his neshama is 100% one with Hashem. The difference is he knows it, and I am still trying to figure it out. So that was the prophecy of Bilam. The prophecy of Bilam says that every single Jew has their own personal Moshiach gene that sits at the core of who they are, and that Moshiach gene translates simply into, I am Jewish, there's nothing that will ever change about that, that is my truth. The rest is commentary. Please God, we should be able to have the personal Moshiach in a tangible way, and by extension, and as a result of that, the real Moshiach, as they say, down here in Tachlis, in the real physical sense, and it should happen sooner than we imagine.